Hello, everybody. It's Clint. Welcome to Sweetcast. And I want to talk about drawing people in different races. Why? Because that's the agenda that has been set. No, actually, there was actually some kind of interesting stuff that came out through an artist about Marvel. I think it's super interesting. Some of you just might not care at all, but it is a little bit of a window into behind the scenes of what's going on at Marvel. Before we get into that, though, here is the piece. Kelsey Shannon drew this for Dracula, Clint Stoker's Dracula, and the plan is for this to be a trading card. I want to make it a foil trading card, so that's what I'm going to say right now. I think I've got a place that'll do that. But if you sign up for the pre-launch page and you get into the campaign, you get a foil Kelsey Shannon trading card, which, I mean, that looks pretty amazing. I'm considering making this a cover as well, which would be a different thing, but we will see. All right, so Greg Smallwood, who is apparently the artist that worked on Elektra Black and White and Blood, which is a relatively recent book. I think that came out, only a few months ago, I think. Maybe not even that long. It's relatively recent. The book came out and he felt the need to set the record straight. This is interesting because we all know that this kind of thing happens at an editorial level, but it is really cool to see the side-by-side comparisons. So he was drawing characters, or at least a character that is of Asian descent, and Marvel did not like how these characters were drawn. Okay, so editorial decided to make changes on these characters. Now, the real atrocity, I'm going to point this out first. Can I make this bigger? The biggest change here are the eyes. But the real atrocity here is that they just did such a poor job of it. Like, the white is so white in the eyes that it doesn't really flow with the style of the rest of the artwork. That's really off-putting. So it doesn't appear that they really changed any shape of the eyes. It's just adding white so that there's pupil to be seen in the middle and the whites of the eyes to be seen on the side. Now, if this was more of like a clarity storytelling kind of thing, I would still be wondering, but why? Like, why did that make such a big difference other than this being the art style? Well, that wasn't the case at all. In fact, they decided to fix these panels because they had issues. I'm going to go down here to the next one. Long story short, he says, 2 months after turning in the finished pages, I was informed by my editor that Marvel's standards and practices flagged my art as requested. I redraw several panels so that they would be within tolerance for best representation of Asian characters. That is the actual reason why they wanted to draw it. So I'm going to show here again another image. It appears to be that the only change here is just on the eyes, and they added more white. So her pupils are smaller, which is sad. This is a young girl, and if you have kids, their eyes are bigger than their heads, and therefore their pupils are bigger. That's why children are cute. So making their pupils smaller, not just the pupils, but what do they call that? The iris, the color part of the eye. Making all of that smaller makes those eyeball proportions look like they're more adult. Now, this doesn't really have anything to do with race. This is, again, like if you're trying to draw a child, you're going to draw that area of the eye bigger. That's how children look. Maybe have a kid or two, Marvel editor, and then you would know. Anyway, I digress. So in this case, their excuse was that it wasn't representing Asian people well. And we got to stop and talk about this for a minute. On the left, is this image offensive in some way? And if it is, does adding the extra white around the pupil and the iris, does that correct any offenses? I don't know how you could say that it's any better, or it somehow makes it more racially tolerant, but I have my suspicions, and those are that there are editors, there are people working at Marvel, and their sole job is to look for this stuff. And so they have to find things to correct so that they can show at the end of the day, hey, I corrected this. I made Elektra better. Elektra Black, White, and Blood. I made it better. because I corrected these sins against inclusivity. Uh, they were in the book. They need to be corrected. Um, the thing is, let's think about this for a moment. The depictions of people in any race, the reasons why they become offensive and racist, is because they end up being a caricature that gets overused across the board for literally anybody that is in particular race group. You could look back. I'm talking history, right? You could look back at some pretty terrible, rude representations of people that I would argue are, yeah, probably racist. In some cases, maybe not so much. In others, absolutely, especially when it's intended to make a particular race look awful. So in this case, is that doing that? No. In fact, I would suggest that if your goal is to say that Asian people should all have more white around their eyes, and if you are going to intentionally add that, what you're doing is you're actually making everyone, in this case that's Asian, look exactly the same. You're actually getting the opposite effect, is my point. Because you are now, you're attributing a certain way that Asians should look to every single character. And that, I would say, is a problem. If you draw them as an individual character, and clearly if you want to have Asians, if you want to have anybody other than white people in comic books, you're going to have to allow artists to depict those people. And this one, I mean, it looks like they've been drawing from real life, that they actually looked at reference photos. Very accurate, and I would be really scratching my head if this somehow was offensive. I don't understand it, but that is absolutely what Marvel did in this case. We're going to look at another picture here. Let's see. He continues. Wife and I were expecting our second child the following week, and I was racing to finish an issue of HT before the birth. So I told Marvel that I didn't have time to make the changes, but that I would be perfectly fine with them pulling the story for sensitivity concerns. So them pulling the story. We're gonna look at this other image here. The differences that they made here is his eye on the left looks slightly more squinted, and they made it more round. I mean, not much, but a little bit more round here on the right one. Marvel's change. What difference did that make? Oh, they seem to add some black eyeliner too around this eye. They're just really desperately trying to make sure the eyes look rounder. But I mean, if he drew them initially like this, I would imagine they would go through and make them look even more round. Not everyone has wide open, gaping eyes. My goodness. He continues. I was told that pulling the story was not an option, and if I couldn't do revisions, the Marvel bullpen would take a crack at my pages instead. I stated very clearly that I did not want anyone touching my art, so I dropped everything I was doing and immediately reworked all the panels that were flagged. Unfortunately, I just found out yesterday that the folks at Marvel didn't even bother using my new art and instead went to print with their own revised pages. I was not given a chance to make further revisions or even approve the alterations made by the bullpen, and also attempted to cover up some nudity, which just resulted in a muddied mess. Again, something I was willing to fix. So in this case, they added more hair here, I guess, to cover up this lady creature thing. I'll be honest with this thing. This is something a little bit different. Should they have gone to the artist and asked the artist himself to make the changes? Yes, I think so. Absolutely. But at the same time, if they're trying to make a book that's like has a certain rating, I can see why editorial would have a problem with nudity in a book that's not supposed to have nudity. Again, though, that would be something that the artist could absolutely change. Continuing on here, just wanted you all to know because my name is on that comic, but I'm pretty annoyed about how it looks. As a palette cleanser, here's the cover of the first two, also the best, pages unaltered. So, and I did not see what the original cover looks like. Here's this one. Looks pretty interesting. It's cool. Here's first panel of the next one. It does take place in Japan. Original. It looks pretty cool. I like the artwork just fine. And so apparently something about this was racist. Okay, you see the panels in full here. Okay, well, I don't know. I'm not sure why Marvel has a problem with like a natural way that this particular Asian girl looks, or Asians in general. Kind of weird. He continues, I've got a newborn, a 3-year old, and some tight deadlines to manage right now. So this is all I'm saying on the matter. Going back to my hole again. I think this is going to cause problems. I'm not going to lie. I think Greg Smallwood is going to have some problems. It's going to happen. So, anyway, we'll see what happens with him. We probably won't hear about anything, but I wouldn't be surprised if you have other artists saying, yeah, they kind of did that to me too. And it's just such a weird excuse to do it. They're so afraid to offend anybody that they're going to go out of their way to make this poor little girl look like a snake. Like, that does not look natural. The first one looks natural. She has like shading in her eyes. She's got, dark eyelashes. Anyway, I could go on, but you understand what I'm saying. Anyway, thanks for watching the video. Really appreciate it. Let me know who cares? Do you not care about any of this? Or is this interesting that Marvel would choose to do such a thing? I'm curious to know. Let me in the comment section below, and I will see you in the next video.